Thank you for MBRF and thank you for UNDP to inviting me here to do this presentation. It's my honor to be here in this great exhibition to be able to speak on the very important topic and the rise of the green investments. Before I delve into the details of the green investments, I would like to highlight why we are now seeing the importance of sustainability becoming more and more relevant. The topic of sustainability is not new. It has been on discussions for decades now. However, we have seen a significant acceleration on the topic of sustainability over the past years. And what is the reason for that? The reason for that is that we are now seeing multiple stakeholders enhancing their focus on the topic of sustainability. If you look at it from a bank's perspective or for any corporate's perspective, we are basically seeing clients and consumers now enhancing their focus on the topic of sustainability. The reason being that they are now willing to pay a higher price for sustainable products or sustainable brands. So we understand that the whole value creation around that topic has becoming more and more important. When we look at it from an employee perspective, when we are seeing corporates want to hire the best talents in the market, they're asking the corporations that what is it that you are doing on the topic of sustainability and how is it that you can support on that specifically. We can also look at it from an investor perspective. We are seeing investors having more and more attention to the topic of sustainability. We are seeing that the assets linked to ESG is increasing significantly. Also, from a regulation perspective, we are seeing a much bigger interest on the topic of ESG and sustainability. We are seeing a huge amount of regulation coming through. We are seeing this in the Western world. We are seeing this in Asia. We are seeing this in the Middle East now, where the interest on the topic of sustainability and the regulation on sustainability is increasing significantly. And one more thing that I can maybe highlight, that especially if you are in the region, we have over the past months seen the significant impact that climate is having on the region as well. We have seen flooding, we have seen significant amount of rain, storms, etc., which was not normal in this region. So we are also starting to feel the topic of climate change and the impact that is also going to have on ESG and the topic of sustainability. One more thing I want to speak about before I delve into the green investment part is also the topic of net zero. The topic of net zero is a topic that is spoken about a lot. It's a term that has almost become one of the most common terms over the past couple of years. And we have seen a lot of countries that have made the commitment to become net zero by 2050. And I just want to spend a minute about explaining what does it mean to become net zero. Basically, everything we do and everything that is created today creates some kind of an emission. This is about whether when you're creating a technical tool, whether it is driving your car or it might be some other effort that you're doing that is creating some emission. And those emissions goes into the atmosphere. On the same time, we do have solutions that are removing those emissions. Some of those solutions are coming through the nature. These are the forests, trees, etc., that absorb those emissions. But at the same time, we are also seeing technical solutions that can help absorb those emissions. Basically, finding the balance between those two is what we call net zero. Basically, that the amount of emissions that are created and the amount of emissions that are removed, finding that balance is basically what we call finding or getting to net zero. And the ambition globally is to get to net zero by 2050, which is also in line with the Paris Agreement. Now moving to green investments. What are green investments and how is that defined? Green investments are basically investments that are supporting from an environmental perspective that helps us either enhance the focus around to save the environment from that perspective, or creating solutions that are helping us getting more sustainable energy and renewable energy there. So the typical projects we will look into when we are speaking about green investments will be the topics around renewable energy. It will be around energy efficiency. It can be the topic of environment technology that can support from that perspective as well. And what we are seeing is we are seeing a significant increase in the green investments. If you look at over the past years, we have almost seen a doubling on the investments that are going to renewable energy. And that is so important because renewable energy is the future energy sources that are required. We need to have sustainable energy for the future. And those investments are coming through in multiple different formats. Those are coming through the renewable energy, it's coming through energy efficiency, it's also coming through newer technologies or newer renewable sources like hydrogen, which we are starting to see as well. So those investment and that increase in investment is so significant and so very important for us. But what is included when we speak about green investments? Those topics range to multiple and a lot, and I'm not going to go through every single one that is here on on the presentation. But just to highlight a few of them is, of course, related to renewable energy. And when we look to renewable energy, this can be to solar, it can be to wind energy, and so on. It can be related to waste management. How do we ensure circular economy? It can also be related to electric vehicles. It's about sustainable transportation. It's also linked into having a sustainable agriculture, because we do need technology, we do need new ways of doing things, and it's so important that those are done in a sustainable way. It is also linked into energy efficiency, because one way is, of course, to look into that the energy source we are getting is more renewable, but it's also important to remember that how can we become more efficient from an energy perspective for the future as well. It's also important to look into that when you are doing investments in the green and renewable and towards sustainability, what are the motivators and what are some of the barriers that we are facing? What's extremely interesting, and this is a very interesting study done by Mubadala together with Bloomberg, and some of the highlights here was actually that a lot of the investors, their reason to invest in green is actually due to high returns. Also, there are some other important part, which is the social responsibility. It's about supporting the climate change as well. But the main reason with the most people are highlighting here is about the greater returns that green investments create. But also looking into some of the barriers that were highlighted by a lot of the investors are lack of standards. And this basically means, as I mentioned previously, we are seeing a lot of regulation coming on the topic of ESG and sustainability. And it's coming in the US, it's coming in Europe, Asia, Africa, Middle East, South America. But a lot of this regulation is not aligned. It's very regional. It might be even very national regulation. And now with the global focus, it becomes challenging for the different stakeholders when there is a misalignment across these regulations. That's why that the lack of alignment and the lack of standards has been raised as one of the barriers to enhance green investments as well. Looking into the typical considerations that are made when you want to invest into green investments or sustainable investments. Some of those key considerations that are made are typically focused around the financial considerations. It's around the compliance, and then they are around the reputational considerations. When we look into the financial consideration, those are typically the ones that are made around the standard return criteria, as we know, that what is the return we are going to get on this specific investments. When we look into the compliance aspects, is typically about we are making this investment because we want to be in line with the regulation or the best practice. We want to ensure that we are in line with the good governance that is required. So that's another reason, another consideration that are made when you're looking to the green investments. And the last part, as I mentioned, was about the reputation part, which can be very much used to, you want to use it for your marketing purpose, or you want to see it because of the reputation it's going to create for your entity or your organization, or it might be part of a collaboration with an NGO or something similar. So those are the typical considerations that are made when you need to look into how and why you are doing investments into green and sustainability. But how does the potential look like for green investments? There's no doubt I've gathered here some examples from some very reputable entities about the investments that are required for the future on the topic of sustainability and towards the green investments. And when we look at these numbers, these are extremely, extremely big numbers. We are speaking about trillions of dollars of annual investments that are required into green. And again, I repeat, trillions of dollars of annual investments that need to go into green until 2050 in order to us to get on track to the transition. And when we look at these numbers, even if we look at some of the lowest estimates, we are speaking about $3.5 trillion, ranging up to almost $10 trillion on annual investments. So we know that the potential is extremely, extremely big. The requirement extremely, extremely big in order to investments. This needs to be made into making sure that we can meet the requirements of a sustainable transition towards 2050. But as I mentioned before, the reason that a lot of the investors are looking into it, what is motivating them, is around the returns. Hence, it's important to look into that. What kind of return are you able to get through green investments? And here is an example of how does some of the benchmark of investments look like for normal generic investments versus green investments. And here we have taken two indexes, one that is focusing on environmental entities and one that is focusing on all entities, basically, and saying that how are the returns developing. And we have enough data to see some signs that investment into green or sustainable or environmental friendly is providing you better returns. So that is extremely important because a lot of the entities professionally, when they want to make a decision, what is it that they want to invest in, they're not only going to do it because of a good heart. They have some compliance, they have some regulation they need to follow, they have investor demand they need to follow. And that is very obvious now that we are seeing some very clear signs that that investment and those returns are now starting to look very, very good from environmental friendly direction as well. Looking into what does the value look like to global green economy, we can now starting to see that the revenue towards green economy is increasing and is increasing a lot. We are seeing the green market share increasing as well. So we are again seeing an increasing trend towards green investments. We are now starting to see the reasoning around why investing in green is becoming more and more business friendly as well from that perspective, because the return and the market share is increasing. When we look into the different sectors, that where is it that growth is going to come from? Because if we have the fact that we are seeing higher returns, we are now starting to understand that the investments are becoming more and more relevant. The investors are having more and more interest in this. We can also start looking into where are those opportunities. And here is a study that was conducted by McKinsey recently that highlights sectors which are going to see significant revenue increase coming through moving towards more sustainable investments. And these sectors just highlights the billions of dollars of the market potential there is, whether this is into transportation or whether it is into energy sectors, or we are looking into the buildings or power sectors. We're now able to quantify the huge potential these sectors hold, the revenue increase they can hold by the transition that is required. So we are now understanding that the regulation is even coming, but we are also starting to see the business opportunities that are being created for this. And much more importantly, we are started to see real economy impact. When we start speaking about billions and trillions of dollars, a lot of us are not able to understand what does that mean specifically for myself or for my neighbor. But we have something we can translate into something very concrete. Over the past time, we have seen that we are seeing significant job creation happening when we are seeing the move towards ESG taking place as well. Here is an overview that more than 3 million jobs are being created moving towards ESG. At the same time, we have seen some jobs in that transition that disappears. As an example, the requirement of coal has decreased over the past years because we have seen an increase in renewable energy. However, when you look at the net of the job creation seems to be significantly higher from that perspective. So we are starting to see real economy impact being made through investment to green and sustainability. And that is extremely important because that is something that we all can relate to. And that is something that are helping the growth from the region and from the different countries as well, specifically that are enhancing their focus towards sustainability. From a FAB perspective, the topic of sustainability is extremely important. And I think in the introduction, it was mentioned that we were the first bank to join the Net Zero Banking Alliance and the first bank in the GCC to come out with the explicit commitment to becoming net zero by 2050. And it's a very important commitment for us because we want to support our stakeholders in making this commitment. UAE has made a very bold commitment and was the first country to make the commitment in the region to achieving net zero by 2050. We, as the biggest bank, want to support on that vision. We want to support our clients and stakeholders who are making that transition in order to support them that how can they achieve this very ambitious target. And the way we do this is through our financing. We have financed significant projects within renewable energy, within hydrogen, within sustainable transportation, where we are actually supporting our clients in that transition that is required. And transition is not only happening here in the UAE or in the region, this is actually happening globally, where we've also had the opportunity to support our clients across the world as well. But also very importantly, we can also start measuring the impact that our financing is creating. So every time we finance $100, it's interesting for us to understand how is this supporting the sustainable transition as well. And this happens through basically the renewable energy we are financing. This happens through that we are removing the emissions through the solutions that we finance. This is happening through job creation these new technology requires as well. So for us, as a largest bank in the country and one of the largest in the region, it's extremely important that we can support all our stakeholders, governments, companies, individuals in supporting this transition, because green investments and sustainable investments are so important to ensure that we have a sustainable future and we can make the transition to a net zero economy that can help us today from a business perspective, from a society perspective, but also going to help the future generations into this direction as well. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.